Hi, Sharks. My name is East Coast Sam, and I'm a poker podcaster and enthusiast. I'm seeking $1 million for 5% of my company, Shark Cage. Here's how it works. Sharks, aren't you sick of poker shows that just have too much poker in them? Well, I'm introducing the Shark Cage. So you have your traditional hand of poker, right? You have pre-flop action, post-flop action, post-turn action, but then you get to the river and the Shark Cage comes into effect. A player decides to bet, and then they put out a card, the value card or the bluff card, depending on whether they're value betting or bluff betting. If they bluff, then the money goes into the pot, the bluff card goes into the pot, and the other player has to decide, is there a bluff or not? And if they call and it turns out that there is a bluff, the player who is bluffing goes into the shark cage. But if they fold to the bluff, then they go into the shark cage for an entire round. It's going to be exhilarating, fun poker action. Sharks, are you ready to invest?
I'm out. I'm Legend Ben, and I'm out. Welcome everybody to the latest episode of the Two Fish at the Tail Poker Podcast. I'm Legend of Ben, and Sam is East Coast Sam, and here we are discussing a couple of big developments in the poker world, as well as looking back on a kind of almost forgotten by me poker show called the PokerStars Shark Cage program. But Sam, that was a great little take there. I really liked your impression of Shark Tank there. Um, but I say before we even get to the show that is the Shark Cage, I think we'd be remiss to not discuss some pretty exciting, pretty crazy recent developments in the 2026 Mind Sport Olympiad. What do you say?
Yeah, I mean, it's been 6 out of 7 poker events so far. Neither Ben nor I are playing the other events. I would really like if they brought back creative thinking, but I don't think that'll ever happen. Or public speaking or something else. But hopefully one day I'll play another event. But anyway, yeah, a lot of exciting action that's been happening so far. Exciting in a few different ways, which we'll get into the details right now.
Yeah, so by our last talk, we had discussed the first three events of seven in the poker division of the MSO, and so we are discussing here the fourth, fifth, and sixth events. That's the horse event, the Texas Hold'em event, and the deuce to seven triple draw event. The first of which was the horse event. For this event, actually, Aaron Robinson did join us for this particular event. It had a total of 27 players. The rec poker player Joseph Walton did not play in this event, unfortunately. And this event here was really the first one that I was able to formally play and not have to worry about leaving for work later in that day. So as a result, I did a bit better than the first couple events, and I had some fun. Although I do feel that probably the biggest story for me of this event was maybe me being a little unfocused because Aaron Robertson was asking us questions mid-event, not different tables, of course, but just he was new to all these games, and so. I think that might have contributed a bit to my a bit of poor reading ability in this tournament.
Yeah, I mean, it was kind of mixed going for me at first. I mean, again, I'm sort of in the zone. I'm not really taking notes, so forgive me if my memory's not super up to speed on this. But yeah, it was on a Monday, so I just had a work day and then I was playing poker. So it was kind of like slow going at first, not really getting a whole lot going. It was interesting because in previous years, I think I may have mentioned this on an episode, that Raz tended to be the weakest game out of the ones out of all of them, just because I think people confuse it for stud. A lot of people aren't necessarily paying attention to the games as they progress. I felt that the players in Raz were fairly good overall this year. Really, in all 5 of the games, I thought the competition was pretty good. Stud historically has been a game that I've struggled with in terms of making value. Obviously, I had my deep run in the stud high-low event earlier this tournament, so I was looking a little bit more forward to it. But again, like wasn't really getting a whole lot going at first, was my personal impression. And as you mentioned, we were trying to talk to Aaron and make sure that he was doing okay. Again, no collusion. We did not know what his cards were. He didn't know what our cards were, but he'd just sort of be like, "Hey, I just took this spot. Can you just, did I do the right thing or not?" And we would try to help him.
Yeah, and it was funny because it felt like I held my own pretty well in Limit Hold'em, and then
Mhm.
I won just zero pots in Raz and in Omaha High Low, and most of the biggest pots I played were actually in the two stud variants, of course, and those are arguably my two weakest games, and so you'd think maybe I would try to avoid those spots, but really, I mean, there were just so many big hands where I just got rivered by, a disaster river card in stud and stud high low that. really kind of kept me from really maybe progressing very far. I still managed to squeak up all the way up to 14th place, which is about, exactly the halfway point of a 27-person event. So, given how bad I ran and how maybe I was a little unfocused, I guess I can kind of take that as a bit of a win. I mean, it was, my best placement of the four events so far. Granted, it was my only one really playing, and I had fun. I mean, when you last a certain amount of time in an MSO event, I feel like that's kind of determines for me whether or not it was a successful, fun experience. I mean, obviously you want to get a medal, but since I've already won a medal here last year, I won two, so it's not as stressful or life or death if I don't do well in any particular event. I also knew that I wasn't going to be finishing overall well anyway, given my start to the MSO, so that wasn't really a big deal. But Aaron managed to get 15th place. I busted right after him. I lasted maybe like 5 to 10 minutes, maybe longer than he did. And I think at one point we were all kind of like in the bottom like four spots of like maybe like 18 or 19 players left. So the fact I was able to kind of let up a few spots here was kind of a win for me, if you ask me. And even though Aaron and I ducked out, in the middle-ish of the tournament, Sam, did manage to pick up some momentum as the tournament was going on and was progressing, pretty well, if you ask me.
Yeah, it wasn't like I had one big hand or anything. Like in the first couple tournaments, it was like I had one big hand and then all of a sudden I was the chip leader. From what I can remember, I mean, it was sort of like moderate spots again across all five games. It wasn't like I was dominating Hold'em and not doing well instead, which had happened in previous years. I just managed to kind of chip up and hang in there and make it to the final table. But I wasn't like a super big stack. I think I may have been like third or so at some point at the final table. Again, third of eight. So, I mean, there's still a lot of competition left. And yeah, I mean, it took a while for I think seventh and eighth place to bust from what I can remember. And I was sort of chipped down a little bit, which again has been kind of the story of this MSO that like I get some chips. I'm not the top stack, but I'm in the running for the top three spots. And then I get to the final table and then I'm just card dead and I just can't quite get things going. So I went out in sixth place, which, I'm totally fine with. I didn't have high expectations thinking I was going to medal in this event. As I mentioned, things weren't going super well at the final table. Um, but yeah, I mean, that's pretty good to have two final tables in short order in four events. I felt, okay, that's a good chunk of points. And I was, close. I was in the top five. I think I was in fifth place before the horse event or after the horse event. Again, I'm not
After.
really checking the standings. I'm trying to just kind of stay focused on each tournament. But I felt like, okay, you know what? Like, I'm okay with the top five finish. I'm okay even with the top 10 finish. I mean, this would be, if I finish in the top 10 for this Grand Prix, I think that would be the fifth of six top 10 finishes in the poker standings, I think, from what I can remember, because I got 10th last year, and then I obviously got third, I got fifth. I can't quite remember what my standings were a couple other years, but I think I just want to show that I have something. I may not be the greatest player in the world, but I've got something in me that is worth noting, and that also people don't think I'm a jerk. That's all I really care about at the end of the day, that people don't dislike me. So I hope that I can prove that a little bit.
And to my surprise, I was actually in 18th place overall, which, this doesn't sound great, but considering that that's a 20, 22, 22, 21, and a 14th finish, I mean, that's not bad, really, considering that the points can really, get out of control here. And heading into the fifth event here, deuce to seven triple draw, which is, I guess, kind of my new, like, Mind Sport Olympiad, like, specialty, I guess, because after finishing in fourth place last year in that event and doing pretty well in the eight-game mix part of that on the rotation last year, I had some reasonable expectations here. This was also one of the smaller events. Again, only 27 players. So that, it was important to note here instead of it being 30 plus or even 40 plus like other events can be. And it really does kind of seem like with this game, by me following those two simple rules from Super System from Doyle Brunson, I have some prowess here. It felt like I understood the mechanics of the game at a level that maybe the other players didn't, and that I could pick up on when the math was working in my favor here because I found myself even after a relatively slow start where I was kind of hovering around the starting stack, I managed to kind of lock into my table mates and pick apart the nuances of their game and really make some good reads.
Yeah, I wasn't looking forward to this event a lot. I kind of figured this would be my weakest of the seven games that were featured. Maybe short deck Hold'em I might be a bit weaker at. But yeah, like I did okay for the most part. I mean, I wasn't a super big stack, wasn't a super short stack for a long period of time. Just kind of hung in there. Got into some tricky spots with 8-7 and 8-7 low, and somebody would raise me, and I'd have to kind of consider, do I continue with the hand or not? I think, yeah, I think I'm able to get out of marginal spots. Like, oh, I have a 9-6 low. I can kind of just fold that and get away and move on to a different spot. I finished in 10th, I believe, overall. Again, I
Mhm.
don't remember my exact placements because I'm
A good
just sort
time.
of trying to stay focused. Yeah, again, didn't get super much going. I was happy to just finish in the top half. Again, a top 10 finish overall, which was nice. And really just sitting back and watching Ben do really, really well. I mean, again, maybe you missed value on one or two streets here and there, but I thought that you were playing pretty good poker throughout. Again, avoiding those marginal spots with like 9-7 lows or 10-5 lows or whatever. I thought you were doing a very good job, and you make it to the final table, and I thought you have a real shot of doing something special.
Yeah, Rec Poker, Joseph Walton didn't realize the event was happening at the time it was, so he had folded half of his stack before the event had even begun, and it spoke to there was one table where there was all but one player sitting out early on, and so he was just picking up all the blinds really quickly, and that's like just ridiculous how people get these lucky spots that we would dream of being in. And then Aaron did not play this event; he had work, so he was not so it was really just mostly just me and Sam that we were focusing on as far as performance. With this event, I was holding my own. I was accumulating chips, and then it's very similar to last year. The chip stacks were very consolidated. Everyone was within the average, and so even the chip winner was barely above the chip average at various points. But slowly and surely, we were whittling our way down from 6 to 5, down to 4. At one point, with 5 players left, I think I had like 82,000, and there were two short stacks that had like 10K and 13K apiece, with the limits like 3K, 6K, 4K, 8K. So I was feeling pretty confident, and then a player busts out in fifth. Now there's 4 left. I win one pot, and all of a sudden now I'm the chip leader with 4 left. So I'm getting very excited. And just kind of similar to last year, just the key spots where I just need the cards to shift for in one favor to one player to knock out that fourth player person doesn't work. I think at one point the short stack was all in risk. I think he pitched a card on the last draw, improved his hand, doubled up through one of the other stacks. It wasn't through me, it was through somebody else. And so unfortunately, that didn't work out. I did have notes here. So I was in second place for pretty much the majority of the final table. I won the very first 2 hands of the final table. In fact, there was actually a hand where I misclicked at one point and misread how many draws were left. And I won the hand, as I say, accidentally, which didn't happen nearly as much this year as last year, but nonetheless. But I was at like 62K with 6 left, 5 left. I had 82K with 5 left. And then I lost 3 big hands in a row with 4 left, and somehow busting in fourth. I couldn't believe it. One of the I did make a couple of bad reads. I lost probably more chips with an 8-7 low than any other hand in the history of my entire life playing poker ever for any one card. I mean, when you have an 8-7 low, I guess maybe I was overvaluing it, but it's kind of hard to break that when you're up against when you're playing four-handed. You'd think that maybe they could easily have a 9-6 or something like that. And even some of the hands I lost with an 8 low is often by like the value of the fourth or fifth card. So it's tricky, and I guess that's maybe where some of my weakness in this game is and maybe recalibrating the value of a hand when the table is shorter handed. But then at the same time, that's why I thought maybe an 8-7 low would be good in certain spots that it wasn't. So I don't know. I did. There was one hand where I accidentally bet when I wanted to not bet, and it cost me an extra 10K, which was one big bet at that point. So that was a big deal. And obviously I was upset about getting fourth place, but at the same time, it was also if I hadn't won a medal last year, it would have been 10 times worse this year to finish fourth. But I was very happy with how I played. I definitely feel that out of all the games in the MSO, this is the one that the field definitely is the weakest in, if you ask me, as a average poker Joe Schmo here. So I do like hopefully that they maybe might keep this game in for next year because I think I could repeat hopefully not fourth place but hopefully another nice Fowler table run. And again, it was fun. It was about I want to say maybe like 3+ hours of play. A little over 3 hours for me, and the event ended pretty quickly right after I lost, of course, because these guys just go crazy once the medals are won. But it was a big jump, and by the end of this event, I managed to jump several spots in the overall poker standings up to 14th place, which again is pretty cool considering that I had 3 kind of forgettable starts to the event. And Sam, by virtue even only a 10th place, now is in 4th place in the overall standings here, and only a couple points really behind the players that are above him. So again, pretty cool that was how things were falling, and it got me into a good, exciting mood to see what happened with event number 6, which is just plain old classic no limit hold'em.
Yeah, I mean, it goes both ways. Obviously, this is the game that we're most experienced with, but it's the game that everybody else is experienced with. This was also a premier event, which counts toward the Grand Championship, not just in the poker events, in the whole Grand Prix. So we kind of figured that there'd be more people signed up for this. 41 people wound up signing up, just shy of, I guess we could call it the record, which is 42. I was kind of hoping to hit the record, but alas, that wasn't the
I
case.
think last year was 42.
Mhm.
But had Aaron and Joseph Wilson from Rec Poker played, that would have been 43. But unfortunately, they both weren't unable to play. So once again, just me and Sam playing. But go in.
Yeah, so getting things started wasn't making a whole lot of hands to begin with. I think I was briefly above starting stack, and by that I mean I was like 10,100 chips. One thing we should mention is that there were 15-minute levels instead of 10-minute levels, so we kind of figured we'd be in for a while just trying to play poker, which definitely helped. I think me particularly as a tight player, I could just wait for my spots, wait toward the end of the levels. And so, yeah, I think I went down to like 9K or so. Again, just, getting a couple small pots here and there, not really losing any big pots, but just not quite getting anything going. Then I had ace 10 suited. I made like a 3x raise. I sized up my raises a lot. I was making a lot of raises around 3x just because I figured that would help my game a little bit. In the past, I've made, 2x or 2.5x raises and got a lot of calls. I've noticed with 3x raises, I got more respect. So anyway, I made a 3x raise with my ace 10, got one call. The flop was ace 10 brick, I think. So I C bet call. Turn was a queen, if I'm remembering correctly. I bet again. He calls. I've already got like 3K in the pot by this point. River's a king. So there's a bunch of cards to a straight on board. I think there may have been I don't think there was a flush draw. I
No,
think it
no
was just,
flush.
yeah. So I kind of just said, well, I think I kind of need to bet out just to avoid getting bluffed and pushed off the hand. So I bet, I think like 1,500 or something like that. He calls, he turns over ace king. So he hit a 3-outer on the river, and I've lost like half my chips.
I think it was stuff not supposed to get a straight draw also.
Yeah, so it was just like F. I'm like, this was supposed to be the tournament where, I do well, and this just happened. And again, we're like a little over an hour into this, I think. So I was, sort of down in the depths. But again, I just sort of like stay focused, just keep playing your game. And then I just tried to win a bunch of small and moderate pots. I'm like, all right, just make your 3x raises when you've got ace king, when you've got kings, and you've got aces, which I got a couple times, maybe like 5 times, like really premium hands. And most of the time, again, I just took the pot down. Another thing was the overwhelming chip leader. Overwhelming chip leader was at my table nearly the whole time. I was eventually moved tables when we got shorter handed, but he took off like a rocket. I mean, I haven't seen somebody run this good in God knows how long. Like one peg below Jamie Golden 06. Like just knocking out people. Quads versus a full house. Better full house over full house. He was up to like 40K, then 60K. Eventually, he took the whole tournament down. Spoilers, but like I like a rocket ship. I couldn't believe it. And he was very aggressive. He raised 2x and 3x pretty much every single pot, like 90% of pots pre-flop. So that again kind of helps my game. It's like, all right, this guy's going to raise, this guy's going to take the initiative. I, as a tight player, can again just step back, wait for my spots. And there were times where I would raise him and he would fold. So I think he was respecting my raises, and that again helped me accumulate chips.
Yeah, for me, in those early levels, I try to see a lot of flops, see if I can, find some good situations. I really didn't, for the most part, I was kind of on this yo-yo where I would be at 10K, lose a couple, maybe lose one or two hands, drop a couple of K, win most of it back, rinse and repeat. But usually it was because of just some, pretty bad luck. On one hand, I had kings, I raise, ace deuce calls, and he flops deuce deuce, and the board runs out where it's like, he could be bluffing or he could have overplaying top pair, and I called to look him up, and I probably, tried to bluff catch a little bit too much. I probably should have, believed a lot more of these river bets that I ran into, but I still managed to pick up enough big hands where I was keeping my stack at least, in, playable level on, you mentioned there were a couple of big chip leaders at certain tables. My table really didn't have like one big chip leader. It felt like other tables had the, two or three knockouts back to back from other players, whereas my table was more or less the same players for the first little bit. I just really couldn't get any momentum. I just couldn't win two big hands in a row. I win one hand, and then I'd lose a hand, or something like that. I was, pretty card dead for a good chunk of it, and my table just would never fold to any of my pre-flop raises, even when I had a big hand. And then when I could raise with ace king, 3x, and then 10-9 and king 10 calls, and they hit a king, and I have to fold, and just some annoying situations like that. With a 41 player event, we both knew in advance how many spots we needed to advance to add to our point total. And I really didn't. I figured, for me, I'm going for the medals at this point. So but for the most part, I just this gradually should be done. I think I cracked 10K plus maybe like twice ever. I never crashed more than like 10,005 at any point. I didn't make any big mistakes. I was never every time I tried to bluff, it never worked. So I sort of gradually dialed down the bluff because obviously if my pre-flop roids aren't working, my bluff aren't working, I tighten up a little bit. Which there were a couple players that I know are among the better players in the field that are higher in the standings, and I was trying to find out some nuances of their game, but I only lasted maybe like around 2 hours into this event, maybe it was like an hour 40 or something like that. I finished in 29th place. I was down to about like 3K. The blinds were 125, 250. There's a 3x raise. Player next to him calls, which is 750. I go all up for 3K, and both of them call. I'm like, ugh, no respect. I have two jacks, and I didn't see what one player had, but the other player had ace jack, hits an ace, and I lose. And it's just kind of frustrating. If I had a few more chips, and maybe they fold the ace jack there. There was one hand earlier that I could have folded to a pot size bet, I guess, and maybe they fold to my raise size after that. But I mean, just it's unfortunate. Whenever I play in one of these MSO events, my first all in, no matter how late or early the tournament is, I'm all in with the best hand, never holds up. So it's frustrating. But I at least lasted long enough where I could, at least have some fun, even though it was kind of a frustrating day. I mean, I made some bad calls, which normally I don't do, but at the same time, I also, won a few enough big pots where there was enough swinging where I had some fun, even though it wasn't really a very successful tournament for me. And again, even though I'm out, really, my most of my like hopes and dreams here are for Sam to do well. He's already in the top five in the standings, and so even though Sam was pretty comparably with me below starting stack for that first, for the first half of at least for my run in the tournament, the first 2 hours, I know that Sam tends to run luckier than me in these tournaments anyway, so I knew that Sam wouldn't let me down and give me a show.
So yeah, as I mentioned, the hand with the ace 10 got me down, and then I managed to again win like a dozen small medium pots. I did get some calls, and then I would see bet on the flop, and that usually took it down. There was also, I think, one or two hands where I got called on the flop. I also double barreled on the turn, and then that took it down. So I managed to get up from like 3,500 or so up to about 7K, just again doubling up through small medium pots.
Yes.
Then I get aces. Awesome. 3x raise pre-flop, one caller. Flop is, I think, three undercards, of course, three just sort of random motley cards. So I'm thinking, okay, awesome. C bet, call, turn puts a flush draw. I think the spade flush out there. I bet again, hoping that he'll just fold, hoping that if he has a flush draw, he'll just fold. He called. River put the third spade on board, and I also think put three straight cards out there. He checked. I thought about betting, but then I decided I think I should just check back. And sure enough, he turns over queen three of spades. So all this work that I'd done for like an hour, building my stack up to again 7K below starting stack, but still had some maneuverability. I'm down to like 3,500 again. So I'm thinking, F my life. This isn't going well. Um, Couple orbits pass. I think I may have won like a couple small pots. I don't really remember very much. Then I get pocket eights. I've got like 10 bigs, so I went all in. Hugo, who is the player to Hugo Pereira, the player to my right, had been raising a lot. I think he raised 2x before I went all in, and then I shoved over him with pocket eights. He tanked for a second calls, turns over pocket sevens. I hold, so I managed to double up to again about 7K. And then I just sort of just kept in the fight, just still trying to win small, medium pots. Blinds are going up. So again, I've got like, 10, 15 bigs, again, chips to play with, chips to maneuver with, but nothing super ambitious. I get two jacks. Not Hugo Pereira, a different player, made it a 3x raise. I think
I
the
think it was
blinds were two.
Chigabon.
Yeah, Che Gabon. It was 250, 500, if I'm remembering correctly, the blinds, and he made it 1,700 to go. And again, I have like 7K behind, I think something like that, or maybe a little less than that. Anyway, I'm thinking I tank for a little bit. I'm like, I've got jacks. Could be doing this with ace queen suited, ace king suited. Probably not doing this with tens or nines. And I don't think he's going crazy doing this with queen four. But I figure, all right, I was gonna shove with this hand. I think I gotta just go with it. So I shoved all in, folds around to him. He snap calls, turns over aces. So I'm like, all right. I think there were like 20 players left in the tournament or something at this point. So I think it was like a top half finish. So it's like, all right, whatever. I'll take a top half finish, no problem. Uh, I think the flop gave me backdoor flush draw. So I'm thinking, all right, maybe there's something. Turns a brick. So I've got two outs. All right, it was like 1 o'clock in the afternoon. I'll go and, go out for a walk, whatever. River's the jack. And I jumped out of my seat like, oh my God, I haven't hit a two-outer like that in God knows how long. And I jumped out and I'm like running back here and then I come back here. Like it was sick. So now I've got chips to play. I mean, I'm up to like 13K or so. And I really just kind of hung around there for a while. We got down to 10 handeds, which was not only the final table, but also the money battle. Not that that really matters. Action slowed down a bit, but again, I kind of hovered in like the 9K to 13K range as the blinds went up. Again, just sort of winning small, medium pots. I won like 25 pots without showdown, and then I won like six with showdown. But anyway, we managed to go to the final table. I'm the short stack, ninth of nine. Again, just kind of got lucky with how the bust outs, and really 10th through 18th went, just kind of managed to get my way in there. Again, I had like 13 big blinds or something like that. I think it was like 500, 1,000 by this point. And again, the guy who had been the overwhelming chip leader has like 120,000 to start the final table. So again, really just, I knew his game. He knew my game. I think we kind of knew what each other were doing. So again, I could kind of just wait back, let him raise 2K, let him raise 3K, or 3X, excuse me, and just find my right spot. And again, just kind of hung in there at 13K for a lot of the final table. There wasn't really a bust out for quite some time, I think about like 10 minutes or so. Then there was a bust out. And again, just kind of hung in there. Did chip down a little bit as time went on, but we managed to get down to five-handed. There's, the guy who again has been the overwhelming chip leader. Really, I think didn't quite go wire to wire, but got pretty close. I mean, he was at like 120K for so long. And then there was another player with like 90K, who also kind of hung on to his 90K for a pretty long period of time. So again, that's like half the chips in playing the entire tournament locked up. And then I've got my 10K. And then there's BC 2017, Ben Collister, who is at like 30K, was like in third place, not like a super huge stack, but like comfortably in third place. And the rest of us were on like 10 to 20K. So a lot of the 10 to 20K players bust. Eventually gets down to five-handed. The blinds are coming around very quick. I just don't catch a hand. Things just don't work out. I get down to 4K. Ben's to my left. I got nine deuce off. It folds around to me. I figure I've got, a
Two
third
big
of my
blinds.
chips already in the small blind. I've got three big blinds. I have two live cards. So I go all in. He called me with like queen six or something, five bricks, and I was out in fifth place. So again, as somebody who came into the final table ninth to finish in fifth, especially after the previous two final tables I had, where I was a huge stack. I was in the top three stacks and I finished in fifth and sixth. To finish in fifth this time around felt very satisfying. I had no illusions about getting a medal or anything like that. Sure enough, the guy who was the overwhelming chip leader gets first. The guy who was in second place most of the final table gets second, and then BC got third. So again, there was no surprise there, no shockers there. Right after I busted, the player in fourth place busted. So, it's just kind of the way those things work. So all things considered, I was pretty happy with my performance. Again, I haven't felt I played super well this Grand Prix, but I felt like I was able to play my small stack pretty well. Again, getting lucky with having this overwhelming chip leader who was super aggressive, and I could kind of just get out of his way and pick up other pots. But I think this was like my best poker performance overall, and I think I did the best with what I could do.
Yeah, and there were definitely moments at the final table where the top two stacks were far and away above the bottom,
Yeah.
five, six, seven players. And even there were moments where you were only, one or two, one, medium pot away from being in third place overall. The top two stacks were taking down the majority of the pots. And even when you were out in fifth, there was a player in fourth that didn't have, had like maybe like five big blinds, if even six big blinds at that point, and they could have been out in any given hand. So that, there was still hope for, in my eyes as a spectator, that you could ladder up from that point. Just unfortunately, you were pretty card dead once your blinds, once your stack was below like six big blinds from the end of your run there. But I was really impressed. I thought that you definitely have evolved your game, even in small bits here with some of your sizing and your seed betting. So I was very impressed. And again, I didn't do very well, but I still had enough fun and even more fun watching you. And again, it just speaks to with poker when you know when you have someone in the game that you want to see win, it's just more fun to watch than if it's just a bunch of strangers. And so by the conclusion of that event here, we have one of the tightest races for third right now. And I've approached this in the MSO. Right now, three players. Sam is currently in fourth place. He's 0.22 points behind Ben Collister for the bronze. So if Sam had gotten one more spot up on any other tournament, that's leapfrogging him. And he's about 0.37 points ahead of Hugo Pereira for fourth place. And so literally we're talking less than 1 point separates third through fifth with one event to go, the PLO event. And so it's exciting to think that literally anything is possible for that last event with and that's happening in I think next week on the 21st. So that will be quite a show to see if we can have some shaking up of the leaderboard. I think first place is kind of locked in, and
Mhm.
second place is more or less locked in, unfortunately. But uh, and again, the fact is that Sam is in fourth place overall without having won a medal. And so it just speaks to his level of consistency up to this point. And it's just kind of gross that, Sam could not win a medal with someone who was essentially the same score and earned a medal. It's just, give us a medal. Goddamn. But anyway, so again, it was a pretty exciting couple of events. Unfortunately, no medals for either of us. We did bubble essentially these events, but it's still fun to engage in this. And again, it just speaks to, what, poker, people pay 10, 15, 25K for poker action to win something. And you know what? It's possible to have fun with poker for free like this with MSO. That's just my take on that.
Yeah, well, first off, thank you for all the kind things you said about me. It was very touching. And again, you played very well too. If you had been able to play those earlier tournaments, I mean, the standings would be different. I mean, as it stands, you're in 15th place. So I think, barring some huge catastrophe, I mean, you will be listed on the leaderboard in the top 25. Uh, yeah, I mean, Hugo, Ben, and I are less than zero point 0.7 points apart from each other. And then my lowest score was 63.4. So I pretty much have to finish in the top third of the field in order to get points. And then Ben has to basically not get any points, and Hugo has to not get any points for me to pull this off. So another like for me to really pull this off, I'm going to have to make the final table, I think, and really medal would get me there. I could, in theory, I think pass Florin Papa in second place if I like won the event and Florin didn't prove any points. But yeah, David Pierce has it locked up at 447.75 points. So congrats to him. And I think Luis Santos could also catch any one of us three if he medaled in the event, because his lowest score is 41.8. So if he got like first or second or third, he would get 40 points, and that could pass all of us if we have a bad day. So again, anything can really happen here. Knock on wood that I can pull this off. But again, I'm comfortable getting fourth or fifth or sixth. Doesn't really matter to me. I just want to play my best and again make sure that people don't think I'm a jerk or anything. That's all I really care about. So
Well,
yeah,
and again with PLO, it's a very action heavy game. It's pot limit, but with I feel like even though it's pot limit versus no limit, I feel like the action is because of the nature of Omaha, it can be much more swinging and big pot prone, much like no limit hold'em can be. So we'll just have to see. And again, I tend to run pretty poorly in these PLO events. I tend to just never make the nuts or anything. And even in the home event, I never really made the nuts or made a big hand. And no one ever bluffed into me. I had to earn every chip I earned when I could. So I have this. Unfortunately, there's like a 53 point gap between me and 14th place. So it's going to be really hard for me to even get higher than 15th place. But again, if I get a medal for the last event, then I really don't care. It's a successful MSL for me if I get one medal, even if I'm not on the overall standings.
Yeah, and if I wind up getting fourth or fifth, I kind of feel like that would be the embodiment of this MSO for us, like the near miss MSO that, I get three final tables. I was, chip leader close to it at two of those events. And then in the third event, I was also the chip leader and I couldn't seal the deal. And then you get fourth place like 95% of the time, like you're medaling. And I thought you had a serious shot of winning the whole thing. Like I thought
Me
like
too.
30 40% chance you're going to take it down. Like I was so heartbroken when you busted, like, oh my God. So if I wind up finishing in fourth or fifth again, I really like Ben Collister as a player. I like Hugo Pereira as a player. I think they're both really great. Luis, I haven't really heard about, but I'm sure he's great too. So again, no hard feelings. This is friendly competition. And speaking of friendly competition,
Yes. Let's move on to our next big topic here, the Pokerstars The Shark Cage program. This is a two-season program. We watched the first season, which was a total of 10 episodes, eight preliminary heats, and then a two-part final table. I had came in similar to Million Dollar Challenge, having watched the hand that was the final hand of this program. So I thought. I actually thought that I would have been watching the season one final hand when in fact it was the season two final hand. So I
Oh,
had no clue who won this season, even though I had told someone that I knew who won this season. And the only other content from the show that I had seen beforehand was the infamous Ronnie Barda Miss Finland hand, where Finland bluffs Ronnie Barda and Sims of the Cage. And so outside of those two hands, I had not seen anything of this program whatsoever.
I hadn't seen anything from this program at all. I mean, I've seen like in the thumbnail Miss Finland of some other videos, but I never watched it. So I had no idea what to expect about it. And as I mentioned in my little Shark Tank shtick, the whole concept of the show is when you get to the river, a player can put out a value card or a bluff card. If the bluff card is played, then it opens up the Shark Tank. I explained the whole concept in my shtick. So when they introduced this concept in the first episode, I was thinking, okay, this could be kind of interesting. And you have such an interesting cast pool. I mean, just in this first episode alone, you have Phil Locke, Jason Alexander, Jennifer Hartman, Lex Veldhouse, Tony Dunst, and then an online qualifier. And so in each episode, there's an online qualifier. And how the structure works is there's 8 heats. The person who wins the heat goes on to the final table, and the final table is winner takes all $1 million cash prize. And another mention about the Shark Tank Cage is if you send a player to the Shark Cage, you get a shark chip. And if you make it to the final table, you get an extra 100,000 chips to start. So there's a added incentive to bluff. So kind of hearing these concepts, hearing these conceits, I thought, okay, this could be kind of interesting. We'll see a lot of action. We'll see a lot of bluffs. This will be a lot of fun to watch. I was having high expectations watching these rules.
Well, so there's a couple of things you missed there. There's also is the shot clock tournament. So that's 30 seconds per action. Players would get two time chips. And I think they got one more every like level or every two levels because some
Yeah.
players would burn more than two. Wasn't quite clear. The commentators are Joe Stapleton and Hardigan. They're kind of again, this is under the Poker Stars like branded of poker content. It's kind of in between in age. I think this aired in 2014. So it's in between the big game, the original iteration, and but then before the big game on tour. And so this kind of is like the middle ground. It kind of feels like the older sister to the big game on tour, if you ask me, in a lot of ways for its editing structure and its format, as far as ad breaks and interview bits and a lot of the flow of what they were trying to present on TV on the screen. And other things is it was put in Barcelona for the heats, and then the finals was put in London. So it was like kind of meant to be a bit more of a adventurous. We're going to be in one location, then we're going to travel elsewhere. I guess they probably had a bit of time between the heats and the finals to allow for some prep work and for players to obviously travel to a different country. So that, I'm not quite sure the timeline, but that's just on my mind. And these are 48-minute episodes. Each one would have usually one maybe two hands that would have kind of a cliffhanger ad break component to it. So like, will this player fold to this bluff, or will what if we don't know what the cards are? Is it a bluff? Is it a value? Are they going to call? So I think arguably probably the most successful usage of an ad break hand I think I've seen probably in any poker show, if you ask me. And besides that, I think. And also there was the usage of the in the tank with and a player's name. So that would be a Jack wild card hand, a mystery hand, where we would see only one player's whole cards, and then the commentators would, along with the audience, sort of play the hand and see like what would you do. And usually it would involve a river bet or bluff. So to play into the format. And the last rule thing, and then we can move on to the episodes here, is the shark cage does not apply after the action is down to the final three, which I guess makes sense because it's a little silly when you're so short-handed. And again, you'd be in the cage for one orbit. And I want to say maybe each level was one orbit. because it felt like the blinds got up pretty quickly. Everyone begins with 1 million in chips to begin in heat. Blinds were 5K, 10K if I think it was a 2K ante, and then they'd obviously increase pretty heavily. And it was a pretty heavy ante structure. I think that was meant to sort of give the Shark Cage more of a punishment vibe than if it was only like a small ante format.
Yeah, I mean, one thing about the ad breaks is every now and again, James Harden will do this, like, is he going to call? Is she going to call? And then Joe Stapleton would shout, "I need to know!" And it was really annoying every single time he did that. It like hurt my ears. Like, do not shout into a microphone like that. Yeah, this stage is pretty traditional. They're sort of gathered around the table. The implication is that, this is set off to the side of another poker tournament that's going on. And occasionally you'll see a player sort of interact with somebody else who happens to just be out in the field at one of these other tables. And then the Shark Cage itself is a short sort of stroll away. I actually kind of like the look of the Shark Cage. Like you walk into it and then it kind of spins around so that the bars are facing toward the table, so it kind of looks like you're locked in. I thought that was kind of cool. There seems to be monitors inside so you can watch the action. And then the players will sort of shout at the person in the Shark Cage, like, "Hey, how are you doing? Oh, gee, crazy bluff there." So that was kind of fun. I mean, the camaraderie, I think, is the best part of this. Like, all the players are just sort of here to have fun. I think they kind of know that this is just some silly poker television show. So they're bantering with each other. But the banter, again, isn't like the banter that was in the Heads Up showdown that we reviewed last time, where they're actually having conversations with each other about, their interests and all that. The banter really is just like, "You're in the Shark Cage," ha, ha, la, la, which gets kind of annoying after a while, I'll be honest. But
Well, the thing about the Shark Cage is that really a lot of the table talk and interviews revolve around it, and it is the gimmick of the show. So I thought it was appropriate because when you're playing a six max, sit and go, at least if it was like 8 or 9 players, you'd probably have to have majority of the hands be bust out hands. So the fact that at least it's six max means that's not a big issue. But a common trend is that really most episodes might go without one knockout until maybe the last like 5 hands, and then it goes knockout, 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 knockout. And even sometimes the knockouts hands are skipped, which I was really, not a fan of. But I guess if the hand wasn't very exciting, I guess, but it reminded me of Kelly Kim in the '08 final table with the number 9, where his hand is not even shown. Like, you can't not show the final table of the main event's knockouts. That's just so disrespectful. It was not quite as bad here, but just a heat, heat number 3. Oh, I mean, we skipped over the fourth with knockout. Oh, wait, but I think it's still worth mentioning. Each episode also began with a seat draw segment where the 5 players, besides the online qualifier, would pick a card and pick their seats, which I like that it gave us like a little bit of a soundbite of each player before the action began. And so they could be like, "Oh, I'm playing against, Phil Locke. I want to be on his left. I don't want to be after him because he's so crazy." And at first, I did kind of like that segment, but it really kind of got old after the third time. Even though I did like how they have the online qualifier walk in by himself, by him or herself, after they've all picked their seats, so that they can sort of take in the table. I thought that was kind of cool because again, the online qualifier kind of fits into the loose cannon, the average Joe kind of player that you root for. Again, I like the structure. I just didn't always think that the education was great with that.
yeah, they don't really mention how the online qualifier was decided. I think one point one player mentions that it was a free roll tournament, but how many players were in that tournament? Was there 8 separate tournaments to decide the qualifier for each one, or was it just the top 8 of a tournament? I would have liked some more information about that. Um, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of interview segments that are sprinkled throughout these episodes, and I kind of like the set that they have the players do the interview segments in. Like, there's these sort of like quick shots of them standing in front of TV screens with sharks in them, and they're sort of mugging for the camera. I kind of liked that. I liked the way that they looked, added some visual flares. Um, but yeah, I mean, the seat draw segment, I mean, I thought it was kind of interesting at first, but like you mentioned, it was just the same thing over and over again. It's like they turn over a card, seat 5, and then there's a shot of them like standing with their arms crossed, like, "I'm ready to win this thing." Seat 6, "Oh man, I'm gonna win this thing. I'm gonna send someone to the shark cage." And it just gets so old so quickly. And then there is a segment that goes through the online qualifier and how they play poker, and a lot of them, oddly enough, have relatives who have died or are about to die and are like really old and they want to go see, which is very odd that it just happened to be like all of them. It was very weird, just coincidentally, kind of made for a sob story, I suppose. But then, like, the online qualifier just really doesn't have much of a presence in the episode. It kind of felt like an afterthought to me. Again, we'll go through each episode in depth here, but spoilers, only one online qualifier actually makes it to the final table, which just just seemed very odd. I mean, I'd rather just have like a sixth player in that seat who I know than this online qualifier. They kept being like, you can play online on Pokerstars and see if you can be a qualifier. And then they also tried to sell the Shark Cage hashtag on Twitter. How many people would even tweet that? I don't even know, but they gave it a shot.
Well, I'll
Yeah,
ask you, would you rather have had an episode that was only online qualifiers, or would you rather have one in each episode?
that's a good question. I think all online qualifiers actually been an interesting episode to see because then would have been interesting. I don't think they've ever done that on a poker television show before.
But at the same time, maybe again, the idea of having more than one online qualifier at the final table could have been cool. But I guess they could have had maybe one episode that was all online qualifiers and still have one in each one. Maybe I don't know. That
Yeah.
could have been different. As far as other things, because there's such a heavy focus on the cage, like for the most part, I would say of the non-bust out hands, the majority of the edited and shown hands are ones that get to the river, and not all hands that get to the river qualify for a caging. Like if someone plays the value button or value card, then no one goes in the cage. Or if a bluff is accidentally the best hand, they have to like check with the producers, the cameras. Oh, wait a minute, it was not really a bluff. Or if someone puts out the wrong card or something like that, like as an angle, which again is kind of interesting actually with this game. Then not necessarily everyone goes in the cage. So, and then there's always at least two, maybe three interviews about like I call it a cage interview post-mortem, where like they describe the hand, they describe being in the cage, they make fun of the player in the cage, and I kind of actually like that because this show is really just kind of poker with a gimmick, and so you might as well play up the gimmick as much as you can. And so on that aspect, I thought it was okay. The only thing is that I did like how we had in episode one every like permutation of how the bluff or value thing could be used, where we have somebody bluff and get caught, somebody bluff and it work, somebody put the value card. I like that in this episode we had each thing that could happen with the river.
Yeah, I mean, the post-mortem was interesting to watch at first, but then again, it was the same thing over and over again. It's like a shot of the player who's just been bluffed sitting in the cage, and they're just like, oh my God, I'm in the cage. And then it cuts to them in an interview. Oh, gee, I had to fold there. It was a tough spot. Then cuts to somebody at the table. Oh, you're in the cage. Haha. Then it cuts back to them in the cage. Then it cuts to the interview. It's just this like fast cut, insubstantial mumbo jumbo. And it doesn't, you don't really have time to settle into the moment. You don't have time to like sit with the player and they're in the cage. They're usually back at the table in the next hand, or there's one hand and then they're back at the table. I just feel like it's too fast. There's too much happening too quickly. There's only 13 hands in this first episode, five of which are shoves. There's just not enough time to really just let things settle in and let the camaraderie settle in or let the shark cage gimmick settle in. Just too quick for me.
Again, this kind of felt like an episode where it's like that girlfriend you shouldn't be with, but you're kind of with, you kind of like being with them, even though they're kind of bad for you. I kind of liked this episode a little bit more than I should have, but maybe it's because I thought it was a lot better than the big game on tour was, and I kind of thought this was like a different coat of paint on the same kind of program. So maybe that was why I had my expectations maybe calibrated to the wrong way. Again, there's a lot of action skipped, and we're not really showing the chip stacks very often, so I really just kind of locked more into the cage gimmick than I did the actual poker action. And to my surprise, despite Gareth playing pretty horribly when the chart table begins, he manages to accumulate chips by the end and win the whole thing. And again, when the online qualifier wins Heat 1, that kind of set my expectations for, maybe some of these OQs might actually, make the final table here. I mean, they're 1 for 1 now, and even though, as you mentioned, he's the only one to make it to the final table, a couple of them make it to heads up, so it's not like they totally embarrass themselves like some of the loose cannons did.
Yeah, I mean, some of them don't totally embarrass themselves, but again, their presence is just fairly minimal. They don't really say too much at the table. I understand this is their first time maybe being on camera. This is their first time doing a big poker television show, so they're a bit reticent, but none of them really had a lot of personality that I enjoyed. I mean, Gareth, again, seemed like a nice guy. But there's nothing that I really latched onto with him. His story, his life story is okay. And again, I was happy to see him win just to see an online qualifier win. But I just didn't care about him that much as a poker personality.
Yeah, no, that's totally fair. I mean, yes, they did get a relatively diverse, cast of OQs though, at least, which is good.
Mhm.
And but also, we mentioned that for the first, I think, was it 2 episodes or something, two or three, instead of it being a card, it was a button like under the table that they would press for the value and bluff. And I guess they thought it would just play better for TV. It was an actual card because they decided to switch that up relatively early in the show, or maybe that was just the backup plan in case the buttons didn't work and they broke or something like that. I don't know. I wonder if there's a story behind that. But with having a button press, I think that it was just an odd choice because you figure with a card game, you want to have cards be the reason, be the way to show it.
Yeah, it was very strange that they switched the mechanic in episode three. Like they had two whole episodes, two whole heats before they realized, oh wait, we should have a card instead. It makes me wonder how exactly they play tested this and planned this out. Yeah, cards are so much better. There's also just it's a little bit more visceral, putting a card forward instead of pressing a button underneath the table. And there's little sort of, oh, which card am I going to play? I'm going to push out this one instead. That plays a bit better than buttons. So I am glad that they changed for cards, but it's just weird that it took them 3 episodes to do that.
But I will say that at least by seeing this gimmick of what we discussed here is that having this river thing, and so it does change up maybe how you want to play a hand leading up to the river. Like if you know that your hand is going to be no good at showdown if you miss your draw, maybe you shove the turn instead of betting big on the turn, or maybe you fold on the turn if you're not going to call the river if you get bet into or something like that. I did like that there were some poker gameplay adjustments you need to make to account for this part of the tournament.
Yeah, same here.
But obviously I'm really not a huge bluffer, so I imagine I would check back a lot of times if I was last to act. Obviously your position matters. If you're the first one to act and you have king high and you're afraid they might have ace high or queen high, then that affects if you want to bluff or not. But I would say obviously this structure incentivizes bluffing. So if you're going to value bet, I guess I would value bet maybe a little bit bigger to make them look like bluffs, but at the same time, it can be easy to read into that too.
Yeah, and also because it's winner take all, there's a little bit more of incentive for aggressive action. Supposedly, I mean, this is brought up on occasion. Oh, it's winner take all. I got to play the game differently. But I mean, there aren't huge hands. There aren't huge pots for the most part. Even the bluffs aren't super huge. So that component didn't quite sit well for me.
But also, if you're going to bet, you have to make sure you're betting as a bluff more than what the sitting out penalty would be for the cage, because we have to be able to see on screen how many chips and blinds and earnings they lost when they were in the cage. And so if you would lose like 50K from being in the cage, you better bluff at least 50K, otherwise there's no reason for them to fold to your bet.
Hmm.
Episode 2 has another pretty interesting variety pack of players. We have Jennifer Tilly, Faraz Jaka, Scotty Nguyen, Theo Jorgensen, Philip Gruesome, and then the online qualifier is Dana Doms. With this episode here, I liked that we had a pretty good like 1-2 punch of Theo against Jen. That was kind of like the main action. They had a good back and forth there because really Theo, we knew him from the 2010 main event, but he was a guy that I enjoyed seeing in that main event, but I really hadn't seen him anywhere else.
I totally forgot about Theo. So I wrote in my notes, Jennifer Tilly, Scotty Wynn, three other guys, some guy wearing a hat were the people in this episode. Yeah, so it was kind of interesting seeing that dynamic. I mean, Jennifer Tilly is sort of the queen of these sorts of shows. She knows how to play up to the cameras, I think, and have good table banter. So yeah, and she doesn't do anything super memorable, but again, she's sort of a nice presence to have. And then Scotty Wynn's always great to have. I was very surprised to see him here. I didn't really see him as the type to do this sort of show, and unfortunately, really underutilized. I mean, you really don't see very much from him. I guess he just didn't get a whole lot going, but it was very disappointing that he just didn't have enough of presence.
He was out in fifth place, and usually there was maybe one or two players that really just kind of doesn't get any hands in the edit or anything and just kind of folds, or maybe they made a bad bluff, went to the cage early, and then just kind of blundered out and was too short to be a big factor there. The very first hands of these episodes, though, were actually often pretty exciting. Usually they wanted to get off on a big bluff note, and so in this episode, Jennifer Tilly makes a river flush against Faraz Jaka's two pair, and then in episode and then hand two, the table calls for table talk and Jamie Gold play, which I'm sure you appreciated too. And so again, Jen Tully usually has some pretty fun table talk, and this was no exception.
Yeah, unfortunately, she doesn't make it to the end, but she does, finish in third place. So, a
Yes.
respectable finish. Oh, fourth place, excuse me. So, unfortunately, it would have been nice to see her, I think, at the final table. But, at least she had some presence in this episode.
Yeah, and our online qualifier, Dana, gets to the final three, and I think just kind of really blows it, going crazy with 33 big blinds, with 5-4 suited, runs into Philip Cruz in sixes, and it was on third. And she had position in the hand too. I just don't see why she overplayed her hand so poorly there. And then heads up play actually gets three hands of coverage, which is actually a bit more than what most of these actions got. And I did feel that Theo just kind of blew it, if you ask me, just
Mhm.
going with his play at the end, and that results in Philip Grusom taking it down. And we should mention that for the most part, not every heat winner would win a cage chip. Some
Mhm.
players would win maybe one, maybe two, three, or zero. So you had a little bit of variability there. And again, sometimes it just speaks to the volatility of poker, where someone else could be going crazy bluffing somebody else. You're over here just chilling, watching the action, then you manage to beat them. With that, I thought it was a fun episode, I guess, with Tilly's action, and I did we had an example of a sad online qualifier story. We had Dana, who was a cancer survivor, and her dad had died recently. So I was at least endeared to her for that story.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't dislike her. It's just I didn't think that she grabbed my attention in a
Yeah,
profound way.
that's true. And then episode three, this is where we do have our switching out of the buttons for the cage for the cards instead. Victoria Corin Mitchell, Patrick Antonius, Gus Hansen, Maria Ho, David Williams, and the online qualifier Matthew Herminiano, a 27-year-old Toronto nursing student who shows up in a giraffe onesie.
As you do. Yeah, in this episode, they really hyped up Victoria Coren Mitchell right at the start of the episode. It's like, here we go, the first two-time EPT champion. And I really like Victoria a lot. She was really funny on Taskmaster, if you've never seen her season, because it was almost like she was a fish out of water. Like she didn't really know what she was getting into, and she did a really great job. Spoiler, she winds up taking it down this heat and moving on to the final. But yeah, it was really odd how they like put her front and center out of Maria Ho and Gus Hansen and all these, I mean, pretty good prominent players with interesting personality. I like Victoria a lot, but it's just sort of weird that they gave her the spotlight over everyone else.
But one theme of this episode was all four guys at some point in time were sent into the cage, which is pretty funny when you have the two ladies just kind of crushing them. It was funny. I did feel like that we had by far the worst play by the online qualifier of the lot. He loses big on a big hand on the very first hand and just goes into the cage from Maria and just, again, very unimpressive stuff here. Obviously, you're going to have one or two duds in the mix usually when you have an online qualifier, but certainly was one. But he will play a role a bit later in the season actually, which is kind of cool. But it's not until minute 30 of the episode where we have a bust out. David Williams actually goes out first, and then Matthew goes out in short order. We literally just didn't see Matthew do a single thing right the whole episode, so we just made for probably maybe the worst player up to this point in the season.
Yeah, it was just weird how he comes out in a giraffe suit and he's trying to be more animated than I think he is in real life, honestly. And I found him annoying, I'll just be honest.
I understand. And then probably the biggest pot of the whole season up until this point was a 3.5 million all in between Gus Hansen's queens and Victoria's tens, where she flops quads to bust the queens and to send Gus out in third place. And you could argue that hand might have determined just the whole heat because of how many chips were in play at that point. Hansen would have had a huge stack with three players left here. And he probably could easily take it down. The final two is the two ladies, and again, this is definitely a lady-dominated heat. And the ladies, in general, did a pretty good job in this season. If you ask me, they finished above probably the average finish of anybody here. And Maria Ho unfortunately misses with a flush draw when she flops a combo draw against a set of jacks and loses. And then the final hand is a cooler threes against eights, or Vicky wins. And again, Vicky played very well. I was happy for her. I knew her a little bit here and there, not a ton. I think we saw her in, I want to say it was like the '06 main event against like one of the like the grandfather, the old guy. I forget his name. It was like he had like his grandson and his son in the same tournament.
I don't remember this.
Yeah. Oh, Golding, Victor Golding. That was it.
Okay.
She was Taylor. It was Victor Golding. Oh, six. Good memory there. I know. But unfortunately, we did have a hand skipped where it was Patrick and Tony's elimination hand. I think that they could have had that in there. If you take out one interview, you could really fit in the hand in. So I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, he was barely in this episode, which is, again, I get it. Sometimes players underperform, but at one point when the chip stacks are listed, he was in second with 1.4 million. So I would have liked a little bit of information from him about that. But
Mhm. And again, I feel like I've definitely been a touch more positive than you on the play. Again, I like the cage gimmick. I like how the sh interviews are all about the cage, and everyone's kind of like, I don't want to go in there. And I do thought that their post-mortems about a hand were oftentimes more detailed and more, noteworthy than the equivalent for the big game on tour, where it's like, oh, I wanted just to bluff him, so I bluffed him. Where I thought that they were a bit more specific with their recollection of a hand, maybe, even if only a touch.
yeah, I mean, maybe a touch more, but again, I don't think the segment is long enough for me to really get information about the dynamics. And again, the editing is just so quick. It's like, here's the interview segment, then it cuts to, oh, you're at the shark cage. Oh, I'm in the shark cage. And then it's like, there's just not enough time to let things settle in, and I need a slower pace to let things settle in.
Well, I thought that, I'm glad you mentioned that because episode four probably has for me the most interesting psychology of the whole season, where
Mhm.
on display from our favorite actress from the film Deal with Burt Reynolds and Shannon Elizabeth, who's kind of the third co-star of that movie. She's in this episode with Elke, Isaac Caxton, Antonio Esfandiari, Bill Perkins, and the online qualifier is this man named Frederick Catel, who was actually kind of a unique online qualifier, which we'll get to in a second here. But I want to say that, like, given how salty Shannon Elizabeth is this whole episode, she's kind of made for a pretty amusing episode for me.
Yeah, this was just weird. Because Shannon Elizabeth's introduced, and it's like, okay, this is somebody who's, not like a pro A-list poker player, but she knows her stuff. I mean, she's been around these sort of shows. And yeah, to see her just go in the cage and be genuinely angry, and then the other guys at the table are kind of teasing her, not really Frederick, but Antonio and Ike are kind of teasing her, and she gets genuinely mad at that. I mean, Antonio Esfandiari, as everybody knows, he's a bit of a troll. He likes to kind of jab at people and needle peel, right? He's been needling Phil Hellmuth for 20 years now. But to just see her, like, it genuinely got under her skin. And she also seemed confused about the rules. She wasn't quite sure how the cage worked and whether or not she would go in the cage or not. Um, that was very odd that she didn't seem to know what the rules are. Again, I have to wonder how the producers contacted these people, how the rules were explained to them. Would have liked a little bit of explanation on that. But yeah, I didn't find it amusing per se. Like, I just found it very odd that all this happened.
Well, I thought the double number. Then also Isaac Caxton, he was a sort of a consultant on the design of this whole program. So this is a guy literally who knows the gimmicks of the show the best because he's had time to prep for how to make game adjustments, for this format. And then you have someone who doesn't even know how the format works, which is kind of funny. And Shannon actually goes into the cage twice in the episode, like as she's coming back out, she's back in, which is kind of funny. And again, literally just she looks so miserable in the cage, and so again, I'm not trying to be mean or anything, but it just given that it's kind of meant to be a funny thing that someone's in the cage, I like that they at least had someone be so upset about being in it.
Yeah, and she goes out in fifth place. So she really just doesn't get a whole lot going. And in her bust out interview, she says she felt everybody was attacking her. So I hope that she at least had a little bit of fun somewhere, and she could look back on it as like a quirky little thing that she did. Because yeah, she seemed unhappy.
And then so our back to our online qualifier here, Ktel. So he's actually a gamer and has played poker in the past, at a high-ish level compared to some of our other online qualifiers. And so I thought it was kind of cool to have a different kind of like a Lily Newhouse where she's not like a total average Joe in the six spots at the table. Unfortunately, he goes out in a pretty bad cooler to Bill Perkins, where it's literally blind against blind. He's got two nines, and Bill Perkins has two kings. I mean, sometimes you can pull the nines, I guess, there, but other times you can't, and that's an example of it. And if you ask me, this might have been, Bill Perkins's finest hour of poker. I mean, I usually don't associate him with very high quality play, no offense, relative to other top pros, but I felt like he was really, on his best game here.
Yeah, he really, really was. And he basically steamrolled the table, really encountered very little opposition. And, good for him. And everybody was kind of talking about how much fun he was having. He never really like lost his composure or anything. So yeah, like I was definitely impressed by his play.
Yeah, he had gotten three cage chips. He puts Shannon in the cage twice, and then gets Ike in the cage once. So again, that's at that point, 300K is a relatively substantial advantage. I feel like one chip 2, not a huge deal in this structure for a final table when everyone's got 1 million otherwise. But 3, you're starting to get there. And then he ends up outlasting, after Chen goes out in fifth, Elke's out in fourth. Esfandiari goes out in third, and then unfortunately, heads up play is only 5 minutes long, and there was big chip discrepancy where it was 5.15 million versus 885K. So Bill was down way big, and then or no, he was up. I think he was up big, and they skipped a lot of the comeback. But it was a very
Yeah.
back and forth heads up supposedly, the lot was skipped.
Yeah, I mean, at one point he was up pretty substantially, and then Ike was up pretty substantially, and then kind of just managed to get a couple of hands going, and then eventually took it down with, again, 3 shark chips, which, again, an extra 300,000 chips to start the final table. It's a pretty substantial first place finish. And again, given how well I felt he played, I thought he had a good shot of taking it down.
Yeah, and then moving on to the halfway point here, we have Heat 5, Duhamel, Griffin Benger, Fatima Morello de Mello, Igor Kurganov, Jeremy Roenick, and then the online qualifier is Zuzana Borosova, a grandmaster chess player and also a mother. So again, it's kind of cool that we have Benger, who was a Counter-Strike player, and then we have a chess player in the same heat here, so they can kind of relate to that. And so we knew Fatima Morello de Mello because she was one of those ladies that was kind of like featured in the like the early episodes of 2015 when they would kind of have like four women in the outer tables that they were cutting around to, I think. So again, I kind of she was more of just a Pokerstars ambassador. That's why we have her here, which is it's fine. And then we have players again. I knew Duhamel and Benger. I didn't really know Kirkenoff too much, and nor did I know Roenick.
Yeah, Fatima, I had no idea who this was. I wrote a question mark next to her name in my notes. Turns out that she's like an Olympic medalist field hockey player. She's got 3 Olympic medals, got a gold medal in the 2008 Olympics. Jeremy Roenick, I think, is a hockey player, and he's also like a Hall of Fame hockey player. So you've got like 2 sort of Hall of Fame athletes here. And then, yeah, Kurganov I'd heard about Bragley, and then obviously we knew Benger from the 2016 main event, and then Duhamel from the 2010 main event. And yeah, Fatima kind of steals the show, at least at first. I mean, she's swearing a lot. She talks about sort of her story in poker, and she's involved in pretty much every single hand to start the first half of this episode. So she kind of took the spotlight for herself, which is nice. I kind of liked her presence at the table, that she wasn't taking herself too seriously. She's sort of bantering with Jeremy because they're both athletes. So it was kind of nice.
Yeah, and she really dominates the first half of the episode, and then ultimately gets third place, which is still respectable. But she could have a little bit more momentum there. She might have won the whole thing.
Mhm.
Probably the biggest hand of the episode is a hand where there are 4 different pocket pairs pre-flop, 3 of which get the money in pre-flop. Aces, queens, and nines. Susanna, the OQ, has the nines, flops a 9 to double up plus and send Jeremy out in fifth place. So again, a pretty big hand. We don't see that too often in the show where there's 3 players all in pre-flop, for example. Unfortunately, Duhamel's hand gets skipped where he busts in fourth place to Susanna, which, again, with the online qualifier, if they're the one doing the bust, I feel like that hand's worth showing.
Yep, absolutely.
And then he ends up, Griffin kind of, at this point, was kind of on the, had bluffed Jonathan Duhamel once into the cage, but hadn't been too big of a prominence in the edit. But then he ends up doubling a few times to get a nice chip lead, and then unfortunately, heads up is Susanna against Griffin, and I wasn't rooting against Griffin per se, but it's just kind of nice to root for the online qualifier, and it was a bit deflating to have Benjer win this one.
Yeah, I mean, Benger also just gets a couple lucky rivers and manages to cripple Fatima. Fatima was doing very, very well for herself. And Susanna was also sort of hyped up as doing very, very well for herself. So to see her kind of bust here, I really was not expecting Griffin to take it down. So it took me by surprise. And again, I don't hate Griffin by anything. The check your privilege thing, I don't care about
Yeah, me
very
neither.
much. I always figured it was partly intentional to get Will Kassouf to call. So I'll give him a little bit of credit, even though maybe he doesn't deserve it. But anyway, like I don't dislike Benger, and again to see him win, he didn't pump his fists and go you suck Susanna, nothing like that. So no problem with him, but it would have been nice to have seen Fatima or Susanna take it down.
Yeah. But again, I thought it was an okay episode. I liked seeing some of these players I didn't really know a bit better in the spotlight here. But it gets us to episode 6 here with Liv Boeree, Sam Grafton, Mike McDonald, referred to as Timex, Jason Mercier, Mike Tyndall, and the online qualifier is Muskan Sethi from New Delhi, India. So again, it's just kind of nice to have online qualifiers from all over the world rather than just from, America or Canada or the UK. We have a little bit of variety there. That's kind of cool. And he actually, there's an interview, which is kind of cool. He had met Liv Boeree before, which, I mean, excuse me, she, right? Yeah.
Yeah, most
She,
yeah.
which is kind of cool that just to have some sort of like story that gets referenced back in an interview a bit later in the episode.
Yeah, and you see a little bit of footage in the green room before the shoot begins of Musken and Liv sort of reconnecting with each other, which I thought was kind of sweet. Yeah, Musken seems like, a decent person. She has a bit more of an edit than Susanna does, and she actually does manage to send a player to the cage, which is nice. Though she also has lost a loved one recently, which again, it's just an odd coincidence that, pretty much all these people had lost somebody.
So Sam Grafton, definitely the loudest, most, I guess, in
Mhm.
my book, annoying player of the episode. I was actually pretty relieved he was out first in this episode, but then he comes back and delivers beer to the table, which is again kind of funny in and of itself. But when it's this player that I just want to have him get out of here, you don't want you want him just to go away for a little bit. He had really tried to bluff multiple times, and at one point he tries to bluff when he had top pair and Liv Boeree had trips. And personally,
Mhm.
I just don't. I never like bluffing with top pair. I feel like if it's not good, then I know it's not good. Then I'm not going to try to bet it. If I don't think if top pair's not good, and you know it, then don't bluff with it.
Yeah, Sam Grafton is just trying way too hard to be the table captain and get TV time and just I haven't written down really anything that he said that like funny or interesting. He's just very loud. Okay, him bringing back beers was kind of cute. I don't drink alcohol, so I would have, not been thrilled with that. But yeah, like I've seen him on a couple of these shows and like I just don't think he's very funny. I don't think he has a good table presence. He's just annoying.
And this is an episode where the blinds get skipped over and jumped to be really really big by the middle of the episode. Muskan does pull off a pretty good bluff on Timex. She had Jack High against Queen High, so it's again one of those spots of the cage where it's like you are kind of you're stuck. You can't just call off Queen High and hope that they have worse. It's just you're kind of forced to fold there, and it was impressive. And I was kind of surprised that the final two players were who I thought would be the two weakest players at the table.
Yeah, it's Mike and Muskan going heads up. Mike Tyndall, who for the record is like a championship rugby player and is married to Zara Phillips, who is currently the niece of King Charles III. So he's married into the royal family, by the way. She's 22nd in line for the throne of the United Kingdom. So technically speaking, he could be king one day. It's just letting you know. Um, yeah, he'd actually done, I felt like okay for himself. He wasn't doing a, super A-list, oh my God job, but he'd been in the top one or two spots for most of the episode. And unfortunately, heads up is only two hands, so we don't get a huge sense of the dynamic. And he does manage to win with Queen 10 versus Queen 4. So Muskan busts. And Mike, again, seemed like a, decent guy. I'd never heard of him, but he just, seemed to have fun. And, I was okay with him winning over Muskan, though, again, I kind of wanted the online qualifier to take it down.
Yeah, and again, it just speaks to, you kind of root for these online qualifiers to do well. And again, getting second place is still pretty good when you're, the least experience at the table or maybe second
Mhm.
least experience. And again, considering that I think we had like one player out first, one player out fifth, and the other ones made it to the top two usually, that's still pretty impressive, I think.
Yeah.
Episode 7 gets us to again the big bluff of the season. That's kind of the most viral. And I had noticed if you check the view count for the Shark Cage episodes, there the view count. So you go from 324K, 228K, 232K, 261K, so kind of middling. Then the four episode 5 is 408K. It's a jump because it has Fatima as the thumbnail. And then episode 6, which was talking about, was 275, and then it jumps all the way up to 2.6 million for this Miss Finland thumbnail episode. So, they say sex sells. I guess we know that that's true. And this is by far the most watched episode of the season on YouTube. The next couple were higher, but not as high as that one, but higher than the rest of the season. And so with this, it can be Miss Finland, Eugene Kachalov, Jan Ribeiro Blonde, Kara Scott, Ronnie Barda, and the online qualifier is Gunther Steinbach.
Yeah, and Gunther Steinbeck is the oldest qualifier. He's 65 years old. He's a retired guy, and he would play poker at his hotel, and has very, very little presence in this episode. It's really Sarah Chafik, who's Miss Finland's sort of episode to shine, at least in the first half of this episode. Yeah, I mean, John Robert Belland, who's usually pretty talkative and pretty present, really just doesn't have much of a presence. And then Ronnie Barter's presence is really just, him getting bluffed and seeming genuinely angry by the bluff or, out of sorts. He's ranting to Jonathan Duhamel about it. Duhamel's, sort of standing off to the side. They spent a long time on it. Yeah, I mean, this sort of being the, bluff of the century, so to speak. I mean, okay, it's, I guess, kind of a fun hand, but I didn't think the bluff was super, super impressive. I think Ronnie should have still called there. I think I would have called there, but I mean, I don't know. It's maybe a little bit of a tough spot. It is early on in the table. You're still sort of trying to figure out dynamics. How exactly is Sarah playing this? But I think you still make the call there if you're Ronnie Barda.
Well, I mean, she shoves all in, and I think Barta still has like 700,000 chips behind if he folds, and so that's most of his. And even after the cage penalty, he's going to have two-thirds at least of his starting stack to play with. And he also didn't want to be gone. You fly into this to Barcelona. You don't want to be out in the first hand, I guess. I guess that's part of it, but at the same time, that makes a bluff all the more enticing to make if you know someone thinks that. So, and also, again, she's inexperienced, so she might, why would you assume she would shove all in with a big hand because she wants to get paid, right? I mean, again, when you have trips, you're only listening to really a full house there or better trips, and so would they really shove all in because they got to put you on something that can call still. So again, it sounds simple when I say it like that, but again, I think I would still call there. He burns through both of his time extensions too, and just can't seem to do it. But again, it's probably the craziest first hand of any episode we have here, and it definitely, probably for me top five, top three for the season for sure.
Yeah, I mean it's an interesting hand, but just like, oh my God, this is some crazy bluff. Like I didn't really think so. I didn't think it was like, oh my God, the most exciting hand ever. It's just who's involved in the hand is what gets the attention, which I just think is odd.
But it does seem like Sarah takes this bluff, like, situation to heart a little too strong, and she just tries to bluff pretty much just every single hand after this point. And at one point, she even does a little angle where she puts out the value card rather than the bluff card to make her it just kind of to avoid having to pay the penalty if she gets called. And it's just kind of funny how people try to work the rules in whatever they can in their favor for this gimmick.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that should be allowed that you play the value card as an angle. I mean, I think there should be a penalty for that. I was kind of like ticked off when that happened, honestly. It's like, again, the shark cage only comes into effect, two or three times an episode, and it's the whole gimmick for the show. And I feel like if you do something like that, you should just automatically go on the shark cage.
That's true, but then at the same time, you're forfeiting the right to have get a 100K chip if you do that, and also your opponent can still bluff at you back too if it's not an all in. But anyway, like we only see Gunther in two hands all episode. One hand is his bust out hand later on, and the one he does when he has six high against five high, where Eugene does not elect to put any money in the pot at any point in time and just gives up, and he wins with six high, which is funny, but you just think maybe that would not happen in this structure too much.
Yeah, it was a very odd hand. At least, we saw Gunther for a quick second, but yeah, very little presence in this episode.
And I kind of felt that Catchloff could have been maybe like the under the radar maybe winner of the episode, but he actually goes out first. He just kind of busts in ho hum fashion to Ronnie of all people, who was for the most part a short stack all episode long. And then Ronnie then just busts to Kara Scott in fifth place later, and then JRB busts out in fourth place, and so Gunther somehow by playing zero hands gets into third place. Loses a flip to Kara Scott, and so the heads-up match though is actually against the two ladies, and we get all of three hands to sink that in. But Kara Scott wins all three hands that we were shown, but she has better cards to begin anyway, so it was kind of a foregone conclusion basically. And of course, the ultimate cooler where you have an ace in heads up, and your opponent has aces.
Yeah, I like Kara Scott fine, and she did okay, I think, in terms of her play. But again, with all the emphasis on Miss Finland, in the thumbnail, in the comments, and absolutely everything, to see her go out in second here was a bit surprising for me.
Yeah, but again, it's always impressive when someone from who's a former Miss Finland gets second place in his own poker show. It's pretty cool. But
Mhm.
probably the worst part of the episode for me was definitely all the simping by Joe about Sarah, and then just the very cringe jokes about Ronnie Barta from being from Boston by Joe Simpson. It's probably the one episode where I was the most annoyed by his commentary.
Yeah, absolutely. It's just very creepy to say what he said about Sarah. And yeah, we're Ben and I are from Boston, so to hear Boston jokes like that, just the easiest, most like wicked pissa, that sort of joke, it's just very annoying.
And then what we have the finale of the heats, the preliminary heats here. And for me, probably one of the better, if not the best one of the lot here, given just how many people go into the cage episode. Sometimes at the same time here, we have Tony G, Vanessa Selps, Mike Mizrachi the Grinder, Artem Litvinov, who I've never heard of before, Ole Shimian, who I only know barely, and the online qualifier is David Harrison, who's a karate instructor. And in this episode, we get a ton of cages, and at one point in time, three people in the cage at the same time. That's pretty funny.
Yeah, I mean, I thought that was funny. Yeah, David Harrison, who's this like guru karate instructor guy, he does talk at one point about experiencing a shark when he was out swimming, and I kind of like the way that they sort of integrated that into the episode. Like he's talking to Vanessa Selfs at the table, and Vanessa's like, "So what happened when you encountered that shark?" And then it sort of like fades into David telling the story to the camera. I thought that was kind of cool, but again, not too much presence at the table itself. Beside that. Yeah, like the real sort of focus of this episode was just all the crazy shark cage action, which again, up until this point, had only had so much of a presence on the show to actually see three people get sent to the cage was kind of fun.
Yeah, especially, one goes in, two goes in, three goes in, and then someone else goes back in afterwards. So, again, I think this episode has the most cages of the whole season, which, again, it's called the Shark Cage, so that just makes it, seem more effective as a gimmick. Unfortunately, and I thought that the Grinder was a lot of fun to watch. I think he reminded me again of his action at the final table last year in the main event. I just maybe I thought he was a bit quieter of a person at the table than what I remembered from years ago. So it was kind of cool seeing him a bit more animated, like he has been recently. So as far as the order of bust outs here, Vanessa busts out first. Actually, she flops two pair, and then Ole runner two pairs. And again, Ole Shimian kind of plays the wrecking ball of the episode. He busts every single player at this table, and no shocker, he gets to heads up with a big lead and hangs on to win.
Yeah, I mean, I'd never heard of Ola Shimonin, and I'd never heard of Artem either. So it was kind of nice to see a player that I'd never heard of before take it down. But I don't really have too many memorable moments from him. I don't really remember anything he said at the table. Again, he played fine, but I would have liked a little bit more of who he was.
But again, I think as far as a wire to wire winner of a heat, he definitely was in control of this heat from start to finish. Basically, despite the fact that he was bluffed into the cage early on, he takes things down. And so by this point now, we finally see the whole roster of the final table. And again, if you had shown me all 48 players, I would probably not have guessed this would be the eight players at the final table. So I like that we had a kind of a variety pack. We at least had one online qualifier in the final table.
Yeah, it's an interesting variety pack, but I would have liked two or three online qualifiers. I think I would have liked a little bit more Shark Cage action. I mean, four of the eight players don't have any Shark Cage chips, and then two of them only have one. So again, that sort of idea of you go to the final table with your Shark Cage chips just doesn't really work.
I suppose, but at the same time, it does mean that Bill Perkins is our chip leader, which is not something you hear very often in poker world. For episode 9, which is the final table part 1, we get a brief sound bit with a sound bite from each player, which is kind of cool. You get a reminder of who they are. We see Gareth actually has this like deck of cards, so he has autographs on them. He's like getting people's autographs at the table, which is kind of funny. Like you have an average fanboy trying to get autographs, which again I'd probably do as well if I was in his shoes. So I don't blame him at all for that.
Yeah, I thought the start of this episode was kind of cool that you sort of like each see each finalist walking in from like a different location into the poker room. They did the same thing in the series premiere of The Apprentice, so that kind of reminded me of that. But I thought that was kind of neat. But it took 6 minutes until the first hand was finally dealt. That wasn't okay. I didn't feel like recapping the previous episodes is necessary. Just show each player walking in. You can have the signature scene, that's okay, and get things started. And you could have incorporated at least one more hand in there. 6 minutes to get started is just ridiculous.
Well, I mean, I think every episode did have that problem where it took after the recap and the seat draw and the sitting down at the table. Each episode took probably like 5.5, 6 minutes for hand one to begin. So that was not just for this episode, if you ask me, a little bit of an issue. As
Yeah.
far as the final table here, the blinds begin a little bit bigger than the other heats. We're at 6K, 12K rather than 5K, 10K. But to my surprise here, we don't learn until episode 9 that the cage did not apply to three-way pots, which I guess kind of makes sense because if you could have like the second best hand betting and the best hand folds and the third hand call or some weird thing like that. But I'm just surprised they didn't tell us that earlier in the season.
Yeah, that is a weird thing that they didn't say.
As far as the dynamic of the final table, I thought it was a bit of a dull final table that was
Mhm.
only amplified by the fact that there were no cages in the whole episode, which is, again, this is the Shark Cage. You expect every episode to have at least one, and this was the first time we had zero.
Yeah, I mean, Gareth just kind of punts off his stack in the second hand of this episode with Jacks versus Griffin's aces. And then once Griffin gets a lot of chips, he kind of just hangs on to it, stays toward the top of the pile, not necessarily number one, but just kind of manages to hang in there. And yeah, to see Gareth just lose a lot of chips and then he seemed genuinely upset and tilted and then bust out early, just felt very, anticlimactic. At least he seemed like he had a good time. At least he got those signatures and got a little bit of time of TV. But to just see him be out so soon in this first episode was pretty disappointing.
Yeah, and especially since he won the first heat, and so you again it planted the seed of the online plovers are going to hold their own, and a lot of them did do pretty well. I mean, most of them made heads up or in his case won.
Hmm.
But again, it's a bit deflating, and at the same time, I didn't really have a prediction as to who I thought would win. I couldn't recall my brain matter here if they had ever mentioned that Benjo had won this event in the main event with coverage in 2016 because this would have taken place before then. I don't think they've ever mentioned it. And maybe they might have, but I'd have to really go back and rewatch. So I didn't know if he won or not. But with everybody else here, I guess I was kind of rooting for Kara Scott because even though she had two deep runs in the main event, I don't really ascribe her with being like a top player that could do super well. With After Gareth goes out, Philip Gruesome goes out in seventh place. He shoves top pair into the nut flush draw, which I thought was one of the worst shoves maybe of the whole season. Definitely
Yeah.
top three if you ask me. And then probably after that, Bill Perkins goes out in sixth place to Benger, losing on the river here. So we're down to five as we get to what I thought was an okay cliffhanger idea.
Yeah, I mean, okay. Kara is facing a shove from Mike Tyndall. Mike's got Ace Jack. She's got King Jack. She plays the time extension chip, and the episode kind of ends there. So it's like, oh, what will Kara do? It was kind of interesting that they would end mid hand. I saw a lot of YouTube comments like, "You ended mid hand. That's so terrible."
I
It's
mean,
not.
we've
Yeah.
watched how many hours of poker, and this is the first time we've seen that. I think it was kind of daring. I kind of liked that having that be an idea for once.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting idea. It's just the hand is not super exciting in my opinion.
I suppose, but at the same time, you have to have an organic halfway point at some point. So, and
Mhm.
again, in general, I did like the idea of a cliffhanger mid hand with because when it came to the cage gimmick, it at least made that hand a bit more substantial than just like Carlos Mortensen tanking for 10 minutes at the main table in 2013 against what was it like Jordan Voltaus or whatever.
Mhm.
And so again, I thought kind of a weak one of the weaker episodes of the season, given that there were no cages and that the table was kind of a standard foul table with no gimmicks really on display here. And with five left here, my prediction was kind of leaning towards Benjer at this point because he had been playing well and Gareth just handed him tons of chips, so that makes things a lot easier for you as a player, of course. Um, Kara does end up calling Mike Tyndall with that King Jack against Ace Jack, and Mike's Ace Jack holds.
Mhm.
And then at that point, that's when we see the chip stacks being reviewed for the whole episode to see as we have Benjer, Ole, Mike, Vicky, then Kara Scott at this point in the table.
Yeah, I mean, I figured Benja would just take it down. I mean, Ole was a pretty big stack, but he wasn't like super prominently featured. I thought that maybe Victoria could take it down too, given how heavy her edit was in her first episode. And she also, again, gets a pretty heavy edit for the first half of this episode and starts to go on a bit of a comeback, manages to get some chips going, and then gets it all in with Ace King versus Mike's Ace 10. But the Ace 10 manages to get there, and so she busts in fourth place with Kara obviously busting in fifth place. So, again, I think Victoria has a good presence. It was kind of nice to see her featured a little bit more. But again, with Ole, being a pretty sizable chip presence, and again, just not having a lot of table time. We see hands with him for sure, but like we don't really hear his talk. We don't really hear he's interacting with other people. He's not really featured prominently in these interview segments. I would have liked to have heard more from him, especially because I know so little about him.
Well, for me, probably the strongest narrative of the whole final table was in this part two where Mike just wins every single hand against Ole Simeon, which is just kind of funny when you have an amateur, beating a top pro over and over again. It's only, a fraction of one half of the final table in totality, but I thought it was, for as far as the poker gameplay, that was the most noteworthy dynamic of the table for me.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah.
And then one thing I did like at first about this finale was there were almost no interviews for like the whole episode until Heads Up, and then all of a sudden it's like an interview like every other minute. So because again, it was nice to have. It kind of reminded me with Game of Gold, where the final table was no commentary, no one watching, it was just a poker. I liked how we had just let's just sit down and watch the final table play out until they decide not to. But Heads Up Play actually is 20 minutes of the episode. So this is by far the longest stretch of any Heads Up Play we've had and in this whole season. And I like that given it's for $1 million, this is the one time you should dedicate more time to Heads Up Play.
Yeah, and I really had no idea who was going to win if it was Mike or Griffin. At first, Mike had a chip lead, not a super big lead, but
Like 4-3.
yeah, 4-3, maybe like 5.5, 3.5. And then the big hand, the big turning point is Griffin with pocket tens and Mike with ace jack. Mike kind of knows that when Griffin shoves that it's going to be a flip. So he figures let's just flip for 1 million. And Griffin manages to double up. But the heads up does actually continue. Mike managing to double up 3 times before he finally busts with 5-2 against Griffin's aces. Though even then, Mike still is drawing live, and Griffin seems genuinely nervous, which was kind of humanizing for Griffin. It made me feel a bit more relatable to him. But Griffin does manage to take it down. And again, I think he's a good player, not like an all-time great, but a pretty solid player, and has, seems to have a decent presence. He's not mugging for the cameras too much. He just, seems like a nice guy. So again, I was content to see him take it down, even though I think I would have preferred Mike just because of the surreality of this rugby player managing to take it down. But yeah, it was okay ending.
Yeah, I mean, but I'd argue the Heads Up Play was probably the strongest poker element of the whole season. It finally felt like we had
Yep.
time for the table, and the stakes were there. So definitely, I guess I could say by default it kind of ends on a high note on that respect because of that.
Yeah.
So as far as my final thoughts on the episode, again, I was making a list of final thoughts as I was watching the whole season, just to bring up to this point in our review here. One was I was a little let down that we didn't have a chips behind graphic on screen. I
Mhm.
felt this should have been in the time of poker where that should have been a thing. It felt like, and maybe you noticed too, that when a heat began, the actual chip stacks each player had was different. Like as far as how many denominations of each chip they had to begin with for the
Yeah.
1 million, it wasn't the same. It was a little strange.
Yeah, that was weird. I noticed that. Again, they never really pointed that out. They never mentioned like this is the 10K chips, this is the 25K chips, but it just seemed odd to me. Yeah.
I'm comparing the show a lot to the Big Game on Tour, and I did feel that the interviews were a bit longer than the Big Game on Tour, and I think better for it, even if only marginally better. Um, I felt that because every hand is either an all-in or gets to the river for the Shark Cage, it meant that we cut down a lot of the raisin takes or the c-bet and the flop takes it down, which I think was a good thing.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose so. I mean, the interviews again, a bit longer, but again, nothing that just super grabbed my attention. With maybe like one or two little segments in terms of storytelling, like the guy telling the story about the shark encounter. Just it would have been nice to have seen a little bit more of a narrative, a little bit more storytelling within these interviews. As it stands, it's just too quick, too insubstantial for the most part. Just didn't quite come together for me.
I'm maybe a touch more positive than you on
Yeah.
that, but that's no big deal. I like that we had a fairly decent variety of online qualifiers as far as their home country or their occupation or their backstory. I thought we had just enough, even though we didn't learn too much of them after that initial interview with them at the start of the episode. I thought that was at least an okay variety pack of players. And I thought that on average the ladies definitely kind of dominated and held their own across the whole season.
Yeah, I mean, with the online qualifiers, their backgrounds are interesting. Obviously, they're all poker players, but they seem distinct enough. But again, during the actual episode, there's just not a whole lot there. And again, with Gareth, punting off his stack to start the final table, I mean, that was just kind of disappointing. It was nice to see the women do well. Again, would have been nice if Jennifer Tilly had lasted a bit longer. Would have been nice if Victoria had kind of completed her comeback. But you give respect there that they did a good job.
Yeah. So again, as a program at all and total, I guess I liked it more than Face the Ace, more than the
Mhm.
Big Game on Tour. I guess less than $1 Million Challenge. I thought that again. I enjoyed the show for the most part. I thought that it definitely began stronger than and it got a little bit weaker as the cage gimmick kind of became less of a unique element when you got used to it. I liked the cast of players they got. Again, I was just surprised that I had mistaken the final of Hannah season two for season one, so I didn't know who won. And again, I thought that Benjer played well, and I was happy for him to win. So. Again, I gave it a, I guess by the Ebert Roper terms, I gave it a marginal thumbs up, which is, better than I can say for a lot of other shows.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think the shark gauge image really works because again, it just sort of fizzles out as time goes on, right? The final table, nobody goes to the cage. People being sent to the cage doesn't influence their stacks too much because it's just one round, and usually it's pretty early on. When you get to 300 action, there's no shark cage. So I just kind of think the gimmick just doesn't hold up, and because of that, it kind of leaves me to give the show a thumbs down overall. I probably would have stopped watching the show 4 episodes in, honestly. I mean, it just didn't really grab me that much. I just thought it was too fast paced for the most part, as I kind of alluded to in my little intro. I don't really feel there were a lot of interesting poker moments. I mean, even the whole bluff with Miss Finland wasn't super exciting for me. Yeah, it just didn't really work and come together for me. I mean, now that we're talking about it, I think of it a bit more positively, but still not enough that I would consider watching it again. As you said, it's better than Face the Ace. I don't quite know how I would put it on the rankings. Like, I don't know, C grade or so. I'm not sure. D grade, I'm not sure. But yeah, not something that I think I will watch again.
Well, again, I think because this was a tournament structure rather than a cash game structure, that's why I liked it more than Big Game on Tour. Because,
Hmm.
oh, a player lost $800 in this hand. Oh no. And then they can win it back the next time. Whereas in a tournament, I'm just more locked in and I care a bit more about what happens than with a cash game structure. So maybe that's where my positivity was partially coming from. Again, it felt like it was just kind of weird seeing this sort of like a time capsule moment of the show that looks and feels so much like the 2025 iteration of the Big Game on Tour, just a decade prior that we just had never seen before. I guess I wouldn't be inclined to watch season two, given I know the ending and that it's going to be more of the same. But I thought that this definitely was a fun show to talk about at least. So I guess my overall experience is positive, and maybe I'm a bit more positive than you, but just a little bit though.
Yeah, I mean, it's fun to talk about this, of course, but yeah, I just don't feel like I could watch this again. I wouldn't be interested in season two.
That's fair. As far as one more little talking point to go over for you after we've kind of covered this is there were a couple of headlines I saw on from Negranu and also on Poker News that you might not be aware of. One is the main event final table for 2026 will be slightly delayed. Not quite a November 9 level of delay, but kind of in the middle ground of where they had been like a day or two after the final nine was reached. So I thought that's kind of surprising. I'm just surprised they would sort of do this sort of half measure approach.
Wait, when is it taking place?
It's going to be like in the like if the let's say the main event ends in July, like early July, the final
Uh-huh.
table could be in like August.
That's weird. Why would they
Yeah,
do?
kind of in the middle. I know. So additionally, Poker Go will no longer be doing the streaming for the main event. It'll be on YouTube for free, daily live streams. Negreanu confirms, sponsored by GG Poker.
Wow, that's a big surprise. Yeah, I mean, everybody has been complaining for years about Poker Go and how it's all behind a paywall. Obviously, after last year with, Kasuf kind of going viral, I imagine that they would want to do something like that. Okay, sure. I mean, we'll see how that goes. And everybody talks about growing the game. Who knows now that it's available for free, this can grow the game. As long as it's done competently, I don't necessarily care about that. Yeah, that's just so weird, the final table being in August instead of July, because the November 9, I at least understand, this is the highlight of your poker career. You can kind of get a sponsorship, you can take advantage of it, or just chill. When it's a big deal making the final table, you can kind of just rest for a little while. But like a month later, that's not really enough time to get a sponsorship or a deal, I think. That's very odd.
Yeah, and again, with it no longer being on Put or Go, that might mean, Sam, we could cut the cord from Put or Go by the end of this year because really that was kind of the main draw left for us. We've watched so much of the content there. That might be in our horizon. Who knows?
Yeah, I mean, the other Poker Go, I mean, the Poker Go Cup events I'm just kind of seeing on Poker News here. I mean, I don't care about them. Or the Poker Masters or whatever other. 1,500 no limit hold'em tournaments 3 days in a row, whatever they want to do. Yeah, I mean, I'm happy to keep poker go just as long as it gets some varied content in there. Like bring high stakes duel back and get some interesting people on there. Do a scripted show. I don't know, do Tilt 2. I don't really care. I'll pitch something to you and I'll write it and they can broadcast it. They can step up their game, I think, and make a name for themselves and get some distinct content out there. But yeah, like if they don't do that soon, I can definitely see us cutting the cord.
Yeah, especially since they posted all the main events on YouTube anyway, so that was a major thing that we watched when we first had Poker Go a few years ago. Other tweaks here, they've made some minor format tweaks to the re-entry events as far as you can re-enter on multiple day one tournaments. So you could, play the 5K re-entry no limit hold'em on day 1A, bust, okay, make the money maybe that first day, okay, next day day 1B, play again, re-enter. It's just, again, it's favoring the wealthy poker players. I definitely see a lot of players taking offense to that.
Yeah, I could see that. And I'm just sort of looking here. They have the full schedule online. In terms of, wealthy players benefiting, I mean, there's 18 $10,000 buy-in events, six $25,000 high rollers, four $50,000 high rollers, $200,000 buy-ins, and then obviously the 250,000. So, the WSOP, I think, is starting to become a little bit more of sort of a rich man's playground, if you will. There's still plenty of smaller events in there. Like the very first event is $550 mini mystery millions, which is starting on May 26th, which I feel is pretty early for the WSOP, don't you think?
I mean, I feel like late May. Sometimes they begin late May, but usually I always think of June. But I don't have it in my head memorized of when the first event is every year. But that's fair.
Yeah,
And a couple events that were in last year that are now totally gone. So we
mhm.
no longer have the Lucky Sevens event. Any shootout event at all is totally gone as well, which is unfortunate. But then the Shark Cage was a shootout event. I like shootout events, and it's kind of fun. I wouldn't mind playing in one here and there. The Hall of Fame Bounty event, totally gone as well. And the Battle of the Ages, which had the field divided in half by age, is gone. That one, I can kind of see why it's gone. The other ones, I'm a little surprised by.
Yep, and the tag team event is on June 24th, so you and Adam better just get your arrangements in order for that. And
I got work. Sorry, saving lives here.
oh,
So again, I'm very curious to see can the coverage maintain the upward trend in quality that we saw last year. I thought that 2024 was very glitchy and poor. 2025 caught me off guard with its multiple table streaming and just being overall entertaining. So I'm a little nervous that maybe we're going to see some backsliding, but I'm willing to give them a fair chance, of course.
yep, and the main event starts on July 2nd as it's traditionally done with day 1A and four day ones. So hopefully we can see maybe close to record numbers, if not record numbers there. And apparently there's going to be a lot of satellites into the main event, a lot of online qualifications. So hopefully they can hit the record. That'd be kind of fun.
And again, maybe we could do some sort of fantasy draft where we pick players to play in the main event and see how far they do. That'd be kind of cool.
Mhm.
Just to find some other, brother versus brother competition here for our podcast here. If you guys at home have any ideas for things to talk about or cover with the main event approaching, in only a couple months, really, if you think about it, let us know in the comment section if you like the Shark Cage or if you were an online qualifier or played in the online flying qualifier tournament to be into that show or you watch season two. If you really want to watch season two, let us know in the comments. We'll give it a shot probably. Let us know because we're always trying to find that new content to watch for our podcast.
Yeah, and I guess we should mention the poker news that I found out about as Ben was doing the outro for the last episode, which is that Richard Seymour actually managed to win a WSOP circuit event. So first piece of, poker hardware for him. So he seems to have his chops. So if there's any other sort of poker news out there, I'm just seeing here on poker news, Kylie Jenner delivers viral hot girl poker masterclass. I have no idea what that is. If you want us to review that masterclass, we are more than happy to talk about it, even though I don't care about the genders at all. And yeah, I mean, if there's anything else you want us to go over, like the Mind Sport Olympiad, we'll obviously let you know how that last event goes, and if Ben and I medal in it, or if I medal overall, or if Ben medals overall. You never know; we might all get disqualified and Ben medals in it. That would be so sick if that happened.
And just
Um,
imagine if Richard Seymour has three rings on one hand from Super Bowl and then three rings on his hand from poker. That'd be pretty sick too.
that would be pretty sick. Yeah, so if there's anybody from the Mind Sport Olympiad, by the way, who's watching this, please feel free to reach out to us. We're happy to interview you, or if you want us to talk about something in particular, let us know. Obviously, the Rec Poker team too. Hopefully, the Rec Poker team can get more involved next year because again, it's a really good event. It's a lot of fun. I think the competition's very good, so you can really sort of hone your craft and sharpen your poker game if you play the MSO.
Yeah, and I guess, guys, until next time, enjoy your poker, enjoy your TV, enjoy your poker on TV.
Happy St. Patrick's Day, everybody. Take care.
We're like 1/10 Irish.